Somewhere in rural Pennsylvania this winter, a retired electrician will walk into a Walmart, pull four deep cycle marine batteries off the bottom shelf at $79 each, wire them into a plywood box in his garage, and ride out every blackout on his road without his house dropping below 58. His neighbors will think he is being cheap. His grandchildren will think he is the smartest man in the county. And when the power cooperative logs restoration times past 19 hours on a bad storm night, his kitchen light will have been on the whole time. No lithium, no inverter warranty contract, no smartphone app, no $12,000 installation quote from a solar company. Just four lead-acid batteries, a charge controller, and a principle of electrochemistry so simple that the modern home battery industry has spent the last decade acting like it does not exist. Because once you understand what that electrician understands, the conversation about home backup power changes completely. And that is exactly what retired tradesmen from Pennsylvania down to Tennessee have been quietly doing for over 40 years. They call it a deep cycle lead-acid battery. If you built that same four-battery bank in your garage this Saturday, you would have a backup system that keeps your refrigerator, your furnace blower, your well pump, and every light in your kitchen running through a 30-hour outage. You would have it finished before Sunday dinner. The total cost, batteries included, is roughly $725 in parts from Walmart and Amazon. The lithium home battery the installer wants to bolt to your garage wall costs between $5,000 and $15,000, depending on how many times he works the word smart into his pitch. And the company behind that installer, the brand behind that battery, and the financing outfit behind that loan all share one thing in common. Every single one of them has a very strong financial interest in making sure you never find out that a $79 battery from the marine aisle at Walmart, wired correctly and charged correctly, will keep your house alive through a blackout for a fraction of the price. Let me show you why this works, why it has always worked, and why almost nobody in the home battery industry will ever mention it to you. The science behind that battery is so simple, it almost feels like cheating. A lead-acid battery does one thing. It moves electrons between two plates. One is lead, the other lead dioxide. Between them sits sulfuric acid diluted with water. When you draw power out, a chemical reaction converts both plates into lead sulfate and pushes electrons through your circuit. When you push power back in, the reaction runs backwards. The plates return to lead and lead dioxide. The electrolyte returns to its original strength. A French physicist named Gaston Plante built the first working version in 1859, 2 sheets of lead rolled into a spiral and dipped in acid. The chemistry has barely changed since, because it did not need to. Now here is where your money lives. Every battery has a number printed on the case called amp hours. A typical Group 29 deep cycle marine battery is rated at 125 amp hours at the 20-hour rate. Draw a slow, steady current across 20 hours and you get the full 125. But you do not use all of it, you use half. Lead-acid chemistry punishes you for draining a battery past 50%. Drop below that line repeatedly and the plates sulfate permanently. The crystals harden, the surface area shrinks, and capacity falls off a cliff inside a few months. So usable capacity on one battery is 62.5 amp hours. Multiply that by the nominal resting voltage of 12.7, and you get a little under 800 usable watt-hours per battery. 4 batteries give you roughly 3,100 watt-hours. That is enough to run a refrigerator, a furnace blower, and a handful of LED lights for about 24 hours straight. Your voltage tells you everything. A fully charged 12-volt lead-acid battery rests at 12.7 volts. At 50%, it reads 12.0. At 11.8, you are past the safe floor and the damage has already started. You do not need a computer for this. You need a $9 multimeter from Harbor Freight. Touch the leads, read the number, and you know exactly how much power you have left. No battery management system to fail, no firmware update to miss, no app to lose when the manufacturer gets bought out in 3 years. And stay with me here, because the cost per cycle math is only the first of 3 things I want to show you. And the third one is the piece almost no contractor in America will ever say out loud. Manufacturers publish cycle life curves for these batteries, and they are not marketing documents, they are engineering data sheets. A properly maintained deep cycle absorbed glass mat cell held to 50% depth of discharge delivers somewhere between 800 and 1,000 cycles before its capacity drops to 80% of the original rating. Now let me be straight about what that means in money, because this is the number the internet keeps getting wrong. $79 over 900 cycles is about 9 cents a cycle. Divide by the 0.8 of a kilowatt hour you pull out each time and you land at roughly 11 cents per kilowatt hour cycled. Run the same arithmetic on a $260 lithium cell at 4,000 cycles and 80% depth of discharge, and you land at about 6 cents. So no, lead acid is not cheaper per cycle. Lithium is roughly twice as efficient with your money across the life of the cell, and anyone saying otherwise is selling you something. What lead acid gives you instead is the thing that actually stops most people having any backup at all. It costs $316 to walk out of the store with a working bank, not $12,000. One trip. Owned outright, nobody finances it, installs it, services it, or can switch it off from a server. That is the trade stated honestly, and a great many households would take it in a heartbeat if anyone had ever laid it out for them. There is also a second effect working quietly in your favor. Puchert's law, described by a German scientist in the 1890s, explains how discharge rate changes the capacity you can actually get out of a lead acid cell. Pull hard and fast, and you get far less than the label promises. Pull slow, and you get close to the full rating. A home backup system is the slow case. Your refrigerator draws about 1.5 amps, where the Puchert penalty is almost nothing. The battery was built for exactly this load, an overnight trickle, keeping the critical systems alive while you sleep. And the proof is older than almost anything in your house. In the 1880s, telephone exchanges in Lower Manhattan installed banks of lead acid cells in their basements, because every exchange needed uninterrupted power. If the dynamo failed, the switchboard died, and every call in the district went silent. Lead acid solved that overnight. The cells sat on wooden racks, trickle charged from the mains, and the moment power dropped, they picked up the load without a flicker. Within a few decades, Bell had standardized lead acid backup across central offices nationwide, and by mid-century, thousands of switching stations were running emergency power on the same chemistry sitting in your Walmart bag right now. That is worth pausing on. This was not one house keeping a refrigerator cold. This was the entire American telephone network, the most critical communications infrastructure on the planet through 2 world wars. The engineers keeping it running did not choose lead acid because it was cheap. They chose it because nothing else was reliable enough. Bell Labs, the division that produced the transistor and the practical solar cell, tested the alternatives for decades, and the conclusion never changed. For stationary float service, a battery that sits charged and waits, lead acid was the most predictable thing available. Now bring that forward to your garage today. Trojan Battery Company in California has built their T105 deep cycle cell continuously since the 1950s. 70 years of unbroken production, and you can buy one this afternoon. Out in Leon Station, Pennsylvania, East Penn runs what is generally called the largest single-site lead acid plant on the planet, thousands of employees and hundreds of acres under roof. They supply telecom backup, railroad signaling, hospital emergency systems, and the same marine deep cycle line that reaches your local shelf. Their published data shows roughly 900 cycles at 50% depth of discharge under controlled testing. That is a factory with 80 years of history behind it, not a press release from a startup that did not exist 4 years ago. In 2015, Tesla launched the Powerwall, and the coverage treated it as though somebody had just invented storing electricity in a house. Magazine covers, standing ovations, waiting lists. At that exact moment, 4 deep cycle batteries wired together gave you comparable usable storage for a few $100s, a chemistry that had kept American telephones connected, submarines moving, and hospitals lit for a century. Nobody held a press conference, nobody clapped. The chemistry worked. The market did not want it. If you are thinking there must be a real reason the industry moved to lithium, some fatal flaw, justifying a price 10 times higher, you're asking the right question. So let me answer it. 3 objections come up every single time somebody hears about building a lead acid bank instead of buying a lithium wall unit, and everyone sounds reasonable until you put a number next to it. The first objection is lifespan. You will hear it phrased like this: lead acid only lasts a few years, lithium lasts a decade, why would I buy something I have to replace twice as often? On the surface, that sounds right. A quality lithium battery is warranted for 10 years or 4,000 cycles. A deep cycle bank at 50% depth of discharge gives 800 to 1,000, and in backup service, it is calendar age rather than cycle count that finishes it. So figure 5 to 7 years before you are at 80% capacity. So yes, you replace it sooner, but here is the number that reframes it. For new, deep cycle batteries cost $316. Across 30 years, you would buy about 5 sets. That is roughly $1,580 in batteries across 3 decades. The lithium unit you are comparing it against costs between $5,000 and $15,000 installed, and its own manufacturer will tell you, buried deep in the warranty document, that it needs replacing somewhere between year 10 and year 12. So you are buying 2 or 3 lithium units inside that same window. The total outlay on lead acid, including every single replacement, stays under $2,000. The lifespan objection is not wrong, it is incomplete. And the missing piece is the part that costs you $8,000. The second objection is weight. One of these batteries weighs about 51 pounds. 4 of them come in at just over 200. A lithium wall battery with comparable usable capacity weighs a little over 100. If you were carrying this in a backpack, that would matter. You are not. You are setting it on a plywood shelf where it sits in the same square foot for 5 years. Your garage floor is already holding a riding mower. The third objection is maintenance, and this one had real teeth 40 years ago. Traditional flooded lead acid batteries need you to check the water level, top up with distilled water, and clean the terminals every few months. Skip it, and the plates dry out and the battery dies early. But you are not buying flooded cells. You are buying absorbed glass mat, where the electrolyte sits in fiberglass matting pressed between the plates. No liquid to check, no cap to open, no water to add. The design came from aircraft and military vehicles where a spill could mean a crash, and that same sealed construction is in the marine battery on the shelf today. You bolt the terminals, set your charge voltage, and walk away. The maintenance objection is 50 years out of date, and anyone still repeating it is either selling you a lithium battery or has not looked at what those 3 letters stand for since the Carter administration. Those are the 3. Lifespan, weight, and maintenance. Not one of them survives contact with the actual numbers, but how the system behaves does depend on where you live, because a battery bank that works beautifully in one climate behaves very differently in another, and you deserve to know exactly what to expect before you spend $1. Start in Phoenix, Arizona. Summer afternoon, 115 degrees outside, your air conditioner pulling 4,000 watts, and the utility sends out a rolling blackout notice. Your 4-battery bank is sitting in the garage at maybe 105. Lead acid actually gains capacity and heat. At that temperature, your bank delivers something like 10% more usable amp hours than its rating at 77 degrees. You are not running the air conditioner off this. You are running the refrigerator, the fans, the phone chargers, and the chest freezer. Heat does shorten calendar life by a few months, but in the moment the grid drops, your bank is at its strongest. Now go to Fairbanks, Alaska. January, 40 below, outside. Your concern is the circulator pump on your boiler, which draws about 80 watts. Without it, your heat stops moving and your pipes freeze within hours. Most lithium battery management systems block charging entirely below freezing to protect the cells from plating damage. The battery might have charge sitting in it, but the system will not let you replenish until the ambient temperature comes back up. In Fairbanks in January, that is a serious problem. Your lead acid bank loses capacity in that cold too. Near zero, you have roughly 60% of rated amp hours, so 3,000 usable watt hours becomes closer to 1,800, but it still charges. It still discharges, it still keeps that circulator alive through the night on one cycle. The lithium unit on your neighbor's wall is a sealed box blinking a temperature fault. Take Houston, Texas. In July of 2024, Hurricane Beryl cut power to more than 2 million customers, and restoration ran well over a week in some neighborhoods while temperatures climbed back into the hundreds. With a 4-battery bank and any way to recharge it, even a small generator running half an hour a day, you had refrigeration and lighting for the duration. No installer appointment, no app, no waiting on a firmware update from California. If you live in a mild climate, this bank saves you money. If you live somewhere extreme, it saves you money, and it keeps working in conditions where the Lithium system beside it has shut itself down behind a locked screen. So why did nobody tell you? Why did no installer, no salesman, no utility representative ever sit you down and say, here is a $79 battery that will keep your house running through a blackout? Why does every conversation about home backup start at $5,000 and climb from there? The answer is not a conspiracy. The answer is a business model. And once you see the chain, you will never look at a lithium quote the same way again. It starts at the cell manufacturer. A factory in China or South Korea produces lithium iron phosphate cells for $40 to $60 per kilowatt hour at the gate. Those cells ship to a pack assembler who welds them into modules, adds a battery management system, wraps it in sheet metal with a logo, and marks it up to between $200 and $350 per kilowatt hour. That pack ships onto a brand company, the name you recognize. The brand adds its margin, its warranty reserve, its marketing budget, and its call center. By the time it reaches a certified installer in your zip code, wholesale sits between $400 and $500 per kilowatt hour. The installer adds labor, truck, insurance, permit fee, and his own margin. When the number lands on your kitchen table, you are looking at $700 to $1,200 per kilowatt hour installed. Then comes financing. Because almost nobody writes a check for $10,000 on a Tuesday, the finance arm offers a loan, adds interest, and earns on your battery for another 5 to 10 years. Every link takes a cut, and every link needs you to buy the expensive product for that cut to exist. Now add the structural barriers on top. The safety certification standard for energy storage costs a manufacturer $50,000 to $200,000 in testing fees to get a product listed, and that goes straight into the retail price of every lithium unit you are quoted. The fire code covering installation demands setback distances, fire-rated enclosures, and in some places a dedicated permit, adding another $500 to $2,000. A modest lead-acid bank in a ventilated enclosure generally falls under older and simpler sections of the electrical code, though confirm that with your own inspector, because local rules vary more than anybody admits. Nobody at the permitting counter volunteers it, because that office is paid per permit, and the expensive installation generates the bigger fee. Then there is the appraisal gap. When you sell your house, a real estate appraiser has a line item for solar panels. There is no standardized line item for a home battery. A $12,000 wall unit adds close to zero documented value to your sale. You spent the money, you used the product, and you recover almost none of it on the way out. A bank you replace yourself for $316 every 5 years needs no installer, no service contract, no subscription, no firmware update, and no financing. It is an extinction event for recurring revenue. Every dollar you do not spend is a dollar 5 separate companies never touch. That is not a conspiracy, that is a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet says you are more profitable to them confused than informed. So here is how you build one in a single weekend. Friday evening is inventory. You need 4 items from the store and 2 from Amazon. The 4 deep cycle marine batteries are in the marine aisle, usually on the bottom shelf. Take all 4 the same day from the same shelf, because you want the same date code stamped into the case. That code is a letter and a number, the month and the last digit of the year. Match them. Batteries from one batch have matched internal resistance, and that means they share the load evenly and last longer. While you are in the store, pick up a sheet of 3/4-inch plywood from the lumber aisle for about $23. From Amazon, order a Victron Smart Solar Charge Controller at roughly $140, a 2,000-watt pure sine wave inverter at about $190, and an AGM-capable mains battery charger. Total parts cost, including cables, fuses, a terminal kit, and the plywood, comes to roughly $725. Saturday morning, you build the box. Cut the plywood into a 5-sided open-top enclosure, 22 inches long, 13 wide, 12 tall. That fits 2 batteries side by side on the bottom and 2 on a 1/2-inch shelf 6 inches above. Drill 2 4-inch vent holes at opposite ends near the top edge so air moves across the terminals during long charges. Screw it together with deck screws. Assembly takes about 45 minutes. Saturday afternoon is wiring. You are connecting four 12-volt batteries into a 24-volt bank in a series parallel arrangement. Take battery 1 and battery 2. Connect the positive terminal of battery 1 to the negative terminal of battery 2 using a 12-inch length of 2-gauge marine cable with crimped ring terminals. Torque each terminal nut to the figure printed on the battery label with an actual torque wrench, not your fingers or a pair of pliers. Most marine posts want 50 to 70 inch-pounds, and over-tightening a lead post deforms it just as surely as leaving it loose cooks it. Loose connections create resistance. Resistance creates heat, and heat at a terminal inside a closed box is exactly what you do not want at 3 in the morning during an ice storm. Do exactly the same with battery 3 and battery 4. You now have two pairs, each producing 24 volts. Connect the remaining positive of the first pair to the remaining positive of the second, and the remaining negative of the first pair to the remaining negative of the second. You now have a 24-volt bank with 250 amp-hours of total capacity. Mount the charge controller above the box, run your leads to its battery terminals, mount the inverter alongside, and connect it to the same bus. Wiring takes about 2 hours if you crimp your own terminals. Sunday morning is your first charge and your first measurement. This part matters, so read it twice. A solar charge controller takes power from panels, not from a wall socket, so do not try to run a mains charger through it. Connect your AGM-capable mains charger straight to the bank terminals, set it to the 24-volt AGM profile, and let it run 6 to 8 hours until it leaves absorption and settles into float. Then disconnect and wait a full hour. Touch your meter to the main positive and negative terminals. A healthy full 24-volt bank reads between 25.2 and 25.4 volts. Write that number on a piece of tape and stick it inside the lid of your battery box. That is your baseline. Every month you touch those same leads, read the voltage, and compare. When the resting full charge voltage drops below about 24.4, your bank is telling you it has lost roughly a fifth of its original capacity, and it is time to budget for the next set. That one number read once a month with a $9 meter tells you everything. A lithium monitoring system tells its owner. Before you load those batteries in and torque your first lug, here are the details I deliberately held back until now, because they only matter once you have already decided to build this. And if you are still here, you have decided. I can tell. The first detail is fusing. You need a Class T fuse between the main positive terminal of the bank and the positive input of the inverter. On a 2,000-watt inverter at 24 volts, continuous current is over 80 amps and surge is higher. Install a 150-amp Class T fuse in a bolt-down holder within 6 inches of the positive post. Fuse $11, holder $8. Skip it, and a dead short anywhere sends effectively unlimited current down the cable until something melts or burns. That $19 fuse is the single most important component in the entire system. The second detail is cable run length. Every foot of cable between bank and inverter introduces voltage drop. On a 24-volt system pulling 80 amps, a 10-foot run of 2-gauge cable loses close to a full volt, converted straight into heat inside your copper. Keep runs under 6 feet. If your layout forces longer, step up to 1 gauge. About $14 more for a pair of cables, and the difference shows up on your meter. The third detail is charging voltage, and this is where lead acid demands more respect than lithium. Because you have built a 24-volt bank, every voltage figure doubles from the familiar 12-volt numbers. Your controller needs programming to roughly 28.8 volts for absorption and 27.2 volts for float. And you should confirm both against the specific figures printed on your battery label because manufacturers do vary. Those numbers are not suggestions. Set absorption too high and you boil the electrolyte inside the sealed matting. The case swells, it vents acid gas, and the battery dies in months. Set it too low, and the plates never fully convert back from lead sulfate, giving you creeping capacity loss and a bank that reads full but cannot carry a load half the night. Lithium controllers arrive factory preset and are close to foolproof. Yours asks you to enter 4 numbers into a settings menu. The app walks you through it in 3 minutes. Do not skip it. The fourth detail is temperature compensation. Lead-acid chemistry is temperature sensitive while charging. Most controllers take an optional temperature sensor for around $19 that adjusts charge voltage by about -5 millivolts per degree Celsius per cell. In a 24-volt bank, that is 12 cells, so on a 100-degree garage day, it trims absorption by roughly 0.6 of a volt and raises it the same on a cold morning. Without it, you are guessing at corrections you cannot feel. Buy the sensor and plug it in. The fifth detail is grounding. Your inverter has a chassis ground lug on the back panel, and it needs to be bonded to your house grounding electrode system, not to some separate rod driven in beside the garage wall. An isolated rod sounds safer and is actually worse, because two separate grounds at different potentials give fault current somewhere interesting to travel. If you are not completely certain how your house grounding is arranged, this is the one step in the entire build where you pay an electrician for an hour of his time. It is about fault current having a safe path to Earth instead of a path through you while you are standing on a damp garage floor at 2 in the morning. The sixth detail is equalization charging, which applies only if you ever move from sealed cells to flooded ones. Equalization is a controlled overcharge held for a few hours every 90 days that breaks up sulfation crystals and rebalances electrolyte density. On a sealed absorbed glass mat bank, you do not equalize because the sealed construction cannot vent the gas that an equalization charge produces. You traded away the deepest maintenance cycle in exchange for 0 daily maintenance. Know what you traded. The seventh detail is the honest summary you will not hear from either side of this argument. Your lead acid bank stores far less energy per pound than lithium. It gives you only half its rated capacity instead of 80%. It lasts 5 to 7 years instead of 10 to 12. It costs roughly twice as much per kilowatt hour cycled across its life. And it asks you to set 4 numbers on a controller that a lithium system would have handled by itself. Those are real disadvantages, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. They are also the exact reason the whole system costs $725 instead of $12,000. Every limitation you just heard is one you can measure, plan around, and manage with a meter, a calendar, and 15 minutes a season. Not one of them needs a technician, a service contract, or a phone call to a company that may not exist in 5 years. Lead acid is a century-and-a-half-old answer to a problem the battery industry rediscovered last Tuesday. It kept every telephone in America connected. It moved submarines through the Atlantic in silence. It kept hospital lights burning through storms nobody remembers. And now it sits on a shelf at Walmart between the fishing rods and the motor oil, waiting for somebody to pick it up. Go out to your garage tonight. Stand in the spot where that plywood box would sit. Look at the wall where the inverter would mount. Picture the next time the power goes out on your street at 2 in the morning. Every house dark, every refrigerator warming, every sump pump silent except yours. Your lights on, your furnace blower running, your freezer never skipping a cycle. And the thing making that possible is not a $12,000 wall unit with a glowing logo. It is 4 batteries that cost you less than a decent pair of work boots, wired by your own hands across a single weekend you will never regret. A lot of what this channel covers disappeared from the mainstream, not because it stopped working, but because a sell-it and service-it industry decided simplicity was not profitable enough to sell. A $79 battery that keeps your house running is not a product failure. It is a revenue failure, and that is why nobody ever told you about it. If that is the kind of thing that matters to you, subscribing and sharing is the simplest way to make sure it keeps being found. And one last thing. Walk into your nearest Walmart this week, find the marine aisle, and look up what a Group 29 deep cycle battery costs on that shelf today. Post the price and your city below. I want to know what that battery actually costs in your zip code right now.